There you are.
What's
Hi,
up?
how are you?
What a great virtual background you have.
Yeah, I decided it's better to be in The Simpsons than in real life.
Yeah, very wholesome family.
Yeah, exactly. How have you been doing?
You know, I guess if you put all things in perspective, I can't really complain about anything.
We shouldn't compare, different circumstances, different situations. So this is actually the first time we speak properly. I mean,
Yeah,
we've spoken via email. You've been to Beirut and we've spoken, but we haven't spoken. And
yeah.
this is
I've
a good way to start.
I've stalked you. I'm the only person that's never met you.
It's true. That's really bad. I feel bad now. We'll make that happen. I'll come to Montreal. That's what's
Yeah,
gonna
there you
happen.
go.
That's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna join the Lebanese influx of people whose only option is to go to Canada.
and
Yeah,
then you can and then you
yeah.
can stalk me,
Yes, exactly.
and the balance will be restored.
Of course. So I've been doing these interviews or discussions or whatever we want to call them. It's just an open discussion, and I start off with asking everyone to tell those few people who watch this like a bit about themselves, some background about you, about Sarah. Where did Sarah start? Where did Sarah grow up? And how did Sarah get into the music industry?
Yeah, well, Sarah started, grew, flourished, partied, everything in Montreal. My parents are from Egypt. They immigrated here separately. They met here. There's a big community of Egyptians here, and yeah, I mean the music thing was a big accident, for me, because obviously when your parents kill themselves to immigrate, they're not like, yeah, go into the arts, you kind of grow up with, doctor, engineer, teacher, lawyer as jobs, and those are your four options. So it was a long journey, and ended up here, quite. I mean, I don't want to say accidentally because I don't really believe in accidents, but I think that when things happen to you in an organic way, then they're definitely it's because they're meant to happen. So yeah, I studied at Translation University. Then I reoriented myself towards fashion design, and then in those years of 2004, everything was kind of like bubbling in Montreal, and it was becoming a sort of an international destination. The whole like post Napster, pre MySpace era was just like yeah, gaining a bit of magic and a bit of momentum. And I was around, and I just started doing things, quite randomly. And one thing led to another. I went back to school, did a degree in PR.
Because
Got laid off.
you also have a lot of experience, like from what I've seen from your background. There's a lot of you seem to have a very good like very good knowledge and attraction towards everything that's international relations and building
Yeah,
bridges between different communities around you. So
yeah.
I'm sure that that's the PR part, but like you implemented it into music. So
I mean, that also happened a little bit organically as well, because I was working for a really fantastic music festival here called Pop Montreal, where I eventually became in charge of everything that was new audience development, all of the partnerships outside of Montreal. And I mean, for a long time, a big crush on, the British music scene. I was a big Beatles fan growing up. So it was a little bit my role at the festival, but also I wanted to build different kinds of initiatives. I really strongly believed in our talent over here, and I wanted to export them differently, export them better, and also kind of build the brand of Pop Montreal in certain places in Europe where it wasn't already quite present. So I wanted to do all of these things, and eventually, I just ended up building initiatives around it. After I left Pop Montreal, I took a bit of time off. I was in Beirut looking for you.
Yeah, running everywhere.
Yeah. I also took some time. I was in Nigeria, and I decided that I wanted to keep on doing these international partnerships and market development, but I wanted to focus it on the Middle East and North Africa, and figure out a way to do it independently. So yeah, I threw myself in that, and that was a lot of fun. And in parallel, I started working for our provincial government here, the SODEC, which finances the cultural multi-sectorial cultural businesses in Quebec, and I work on the international side, where we kind of act as the cultural export office here.
Okay, yeah. Also, I saw that you started doing that, but before going back to Pop Montreal, because that's something that has quite a big reputation around the world, and it's a really good reputation for, at least for people who are outside, and we see it and we're like, this looks like an amazing festival. I'm very curious to know, like, how did you start with them? More because you ended up being the director of communications and international relations and so on. But but you didn't. I don't know if you started in that position, but if you didn't,
No.
what was the step up? Like, where did you start and how did you end up there?
Yeah. So my last job in fashion, actually, I was the head designer for our men's line, and then one day I get into work and I'm told that I'm laid off. So and it was during Pop Montreal 2009. So I kind of left work. I went straight to the festival. They had some barbecues and free shows happening. And at that point, I had just finished my PR degree, and I was trying to get into music a bit more seriously. So after the festival ended, I ended up writing to the girl who was in charge of the PR, and I was like, hey, if you need help, like, just anything, encouragement, you want me to, like, clap your hands, my hands right there in front of you, I can do a lot of stuff. So she was actually, I hadn't realized at the time, but doing, like most of the PR in Montreal for all of the kind of bands and whatever. And this is like 2009 again, where like, Patrick Watson and like Islands and all of these bands are like getting signed all over the world, and they're touring all over, the world. I mean, the US and Europe and all of that. So I ended up getting an internship with her. Eventually, she hired me to become her assistant at Pop Montreal. My first day at Pop, I get in. She's not there. I'm like, that's interesting. Next day, she's still not there. And then on the third day, I get an email from her. She says, oh, you've probably heard. No one had told me, actually. She said, you probably heard I left Pop. I'm starting to work, I'm starting a new position with Arcade Fire. So, good luck. And yeah, and the rest was history, as we say.
Wow. That's crazy. And for you, over the years, you obviously must have seen the festival evolve and grow. And where do you see it at today? Like, what's your perception of it now that you haven't been working with them, and maybe you have an external point of view? Now you look at it, from with a bird's eye. Like, what do you think of the festival today versus how it was at the beginning?
Well, my main thought is still what it was at the beginning, which is a perspective that I lost being so stuck in the machine, which is that it's a really, really, really fun festival. yeah, it's a fun festival. It brings a lot of joy to my heart and to the hearts of many people. I think that events right now, in the last 15, 20 years, we've seen, a huge boom in festivals, and there was this obsession over, growing. How do we get bigger, bigger, bigger? And I think everyone is reflecting, and Pop maybe had this reflection, started having this reflection a few years ago, where maybe it's not always about, becoming bigger and adding more artists and adding more events and having more sponsors. Maybe it's just about, doing what you do best and, focusing on that niche that makes you unique, and just doing that and providing that, in a perfect way. This year, they just had their edition that finished last week or the week before, and they did something super trimmed down. I think they had maybe like 20, 25 artists. They had some films, they had panels still. They did the artisanal fair online, and they did like just a few shows that were live streamed, but they also had, a public of about like 15 to 20 people per show. And, it still brought forth, I think, that sense of community. People were really excited. Oh, it's Pop Montreal. And I didn't go to any shows, but I was watching online, and I was like, okay, so what's happening now? What's happening now? And sometimes I'd see, friends from like Ottawa or whatever on the screens, and, it was still that excitement of like running into your friends at Pop Montreal.
So you could see the people attending during the.
Well, you can kind of see the audience, and sometimes you see people walking, or
okay. I thought maybe
the show, and
yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so I think that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. So
yeah.
moving on from Pop Montreal, you've managed a couple of artists, and
Yeah.
from your experience, why would you say that it's something that you would recommend for artists to have or not to have? Because I personally have an opinion, and I'd like to know what you think of this, that if an artist is at a starting point, meaning a starting point in terms of growth, not in terms of how long they've been doing this, meaning they're not a band that fills up 1,000-seater venues. I think having a manager is almost a luxury, and it doesn't benefit the band or the artist or the manager. Meaning, I know from my experience when I used to manage artists that I wasn't making much money, they weren't making much money, and we were just like, fighting, holding on to this, these little things. And I just have this today, like years later, I always think that it is a luxury to have at that point for the band. And for the manager, it's, we would fight a lot to get the band as far as they can. I want to know what your opinion is of the role of an artist manager today in this COVID world, and in all the things that you've done, whether it's music festivals, what you've exchanged with different artist managers and with different artists. How do you feel is the role of a manager based on your experience?
Well, I'm just going to say one thing first to this, is that I always tell artists that they have to treat their band like a business. Okay, so we're not,
I'm having I have a big smile on my face because I interviewed someone who literally said word for word the same thing. The same.
But it's
true. Yeah.
It's true. It's totally true. That person you spoke to was very wise. Yeah. So your band is a business. I've seen so many artists that were like in talks, that were famous in the like 70s, 80s, 90s, when the machines, and they were in these like huge machines, and they always talk about how they were robbed. They were robbed by their labels, they were robbed by the people that were around them, and because they didn't understand the business. It has always been extremely important to understand the business. It's still more than ever really important to understand the business. And maybe as everyone is different and has different aptitudes, and it's maybe not in you to execute every aspect of the business you definitely at the very least need to understand it. That's number one. Number two, a manager. I mean, I've always just kind of seen a manager as a project manager, and that's kind of how I've taken on my role. It's especially over here, where in Canada, where we are so fortunate to benefit from an extraordinary arts funding system, both provincially and federally. It's being aware of the opportunities out there, presenting these business opportunities really to the artists you work with, and saying, do you want to work on this? And then project managing these these initiatives. So I've always seen a manager kind of in that role. If you're able to yourself execute, various aspects of the business, then your manager is really just your assistant in case you need extra time to execute, everything. But knowing the business is first your responsibility, and then having a project manager, you don't work for the manager works for you. So as the boss,
100%.
You need to, be supervising and understand, what this person's role is, what they're doing, and, and calculating the return on investment in the manager. So.
Yeah, and I agree with that point of view, because I've been through it myself, and I managed quite a few artists. And in this today, whenever I do work with artists, I tell them I'm working with them on a project basis. So if it's an EP, I'm working with them on that EP. This is our point. This is our objective. This is the return on investment. I do the plan for them, but it's just because there's no one will care more about their project than them. So you as you said, you're hiring me to do a job, so it's this is where it becomes tricky, because it's it always feels like it's the other way around, that the artist once just says, please, I need a manager, help me out, as if it's going to solve everything, but no, it rarely does. And for aspiring managers, for young guys and girls who want to become artist managers, what would you tell them out of your experience?
I'd say go get your head checked. Why, on both sides, an artist says, I need a manager. I usually say, why? Can you explain why you need a manager? And the same thing with people who want to be artist managers. It's why? But what you said, Anthony, is pretty spot on. That I think that especially in the way the music business is structured today, that it's probably a lot smarter to work with people on project basis, and to go little by little, and then that way, you're investing, what you need to invest in terms of, time, in terms of energy, in terms of emotional energy, and the artist knows what to expect, and building it that way in smaller goals and in smaller projects is probably more sustainable for everyone, because then the artist isn't giving away, commission to someone that they just have on payroll and that isn't, actually managing anything. And, in return, the person who's managing has more time to do, the various projects that they want to do. But an artist manager, at skills needs, they need to understand their environment very well. They need to understand the opportunities around them very, very, very well. They need to build contacts with everyone, with industry, with funders. It's endless,
Yeah, it's not an easy thing. I mean, for both sides, it's not easy. I've never seen it to be easy, and I have a lot of empathy towards both, artists and artist managers, irrespective of what happens, because I've been there. I've never been an artist, but I've worked with many artists, and I know the struggle they go through, and I know my own struggles that I had to go through. So it's a very, very tricky thing. But yeah, I'm like you. I wouldn't tell people to get their head checked. Maybe I would. depends. But I would definitely tell them like to as you say, like why, like really to answer the question of why do you want to do this, like what's your purpose. If it's for money purposes, then unless you're going to manage I don't know, Justin Timberlake or someone of that scale, then the money is not necessarily going to be that great. So, and it's a lot of work. So, yeah, definitely agree. Now that you were saying you work with SODEC, so you handle, you said everything related to kind of like the international development of various projects, I believe, related to the Middle East and North Africa.
No, so the Middle East and North Africa is something I've been doing independently because
okay.
because I guess I like
because you're from us. You're deep down. You're one of us.
No, but I believe so much in the potential of the territory. I mean, potential, like, is that even the right? It's such an amazingly exciting territories, and even in West Africa. I've done a couple of things in Nigeria. It's just super exciting places to work in terms of like the quality of the work that you find there, in terms of how engaged the public is, and the market, how fresh it is, So like I truly believe in the great potential of these territories once copyright laws are properly implemented, and people will come running, people will come flocking.
So how do you perceive, like, now that, I mean, I'm clearly you're a big fan of what's happening in the Middle East, North Africa, and as you said, West Africa. When you look at it from your perspective, how do you see these music industries and music scenes in these countries and regions? What's your take on what's missing, what needs to be done? How can we improve stuff out here?
I mean, how can you? I'm going to state the obvious, where, and of course I don't want to infuriate anyone, but the governments need to invest in culture. I mean, I don't understand what they don't understand. The return on investment in culture, how culture impacts every sector around it. It impacts tourism, it impacts the restaurant industry, it impacts absolutely everything. So I don't comprehend why governments are not investing in culture at the moment. The return is immense. In the countries that calculate the place of culture in their GDPs, it's tremendous. So there needs to be proper programs for professional cultural workers, for artists to work on their art, to export their art, and to promote it in a general way. So that's number one, what's missing. Number two, what's missing is proper copyright laws, proper IP laws, so that what's going to make, I think, encourage Western industries to invest in Africa or the Middle East is knowing that they're going to be able to collect royalties on their work, that the work won't get pirated. So all of these things are really important. But beyond that, I've really made it my mission to explain to as many people as I can how thriving the art scenes are, the music communities are, how, incredibly skilled the young entrepreneurs are at building structures in a context where they're not at all supported by their cultural governments, and how dynamic the audiences are. And those are things that are still very relevant to the Western industry. So I think that beginning to invest, despite the fact that the structures aren't quite there yet, is very beneficial for anyone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, with I know for Lebanon, there's so many layers of all the stuff that comes along with Lebanon. And so you came over in 2017 or 18? Was it 18?
Both.
Oh, you came over.
And 19.
Really? You came over
Yes.
3 times?
I came over 3 times.
And I didn't see you once?
For weeks and weeks and weeks. No, I mean, I thought you didn't like me. I thought you were avoiding me.
No, but I can't believe, oh my God, I don't realize the time. I have no idea. I thought you came over once. That was
No.
so what was your impression of the music scene in Lebanon? And what would you say are things, again, I'm saying this in the knowledge that perhaps there might be a couple of artists from Lebanon who will watch this. Like, what would you tell them, the artists? What can they do to improve? What can they do? What are the little things they should pay attention to that maybe you noticed they didn't? And what's your overall take on the music scene out here in Lebanon and what you saw and elsewhere in the region, if you've seen other stuff?
So anytime I travel to say the Middle East, you know, I'm always really just so positively surprised at the type of things that are going on there. And, you know, it's because up until, you know, quite recently in my life, like I grew up, you know, very isolated from all of that over here. And it wasn't until, you know, maybe like 2014 that I started going back to the region again. And when I went back to Egypt in 2014, and again, there was like no government in power at the time, and everything was kind of all over the place after the revolution, but I couldn't believe how amazing Egypt was, like in that context. And I was so confronted at how misrepresented the Middle East was to me, and how I could be bought by that misrepresentation, despite the fact that, you know, I still have family there, and my parents are from there and all of that. So every time I go, and now, you know, I'm fortunate enough to have so many friends, so many people, you know, that I know like you, who work in the cultural sector, and you know, thanks to social media, like I see people sharing things and all of that, and it's just, in a lot of ways, things are a lot harder to do in the Middle East, but in a lot of ways, they're also a lot easier. You know, we have structures to put on events here, but it's a lot of permits and this and that, and, you know, go see this guy, that guy, whatever, you know. Whereas in Egypt, you can kind of just throw these like raves on like islands in the Nile, and you're, you know,
whatever happens, happens.
Great, good, yeah, it's like, okay, you know, whatever happens, happens. Exactly. So in a lot of ways, it's also a lot easier to have, you know, things that maybe people take for granted over there. But to me, it's like, you know, whoa, it's the experience of a lifetime. So I'm always so, and I mean, especially when I arrived in Beirut for the first time in 2017, I was just under shock. I think for the 2 first weeks, every day I was just like looking around, and I was like, I can't believe I'm in the Middle East. I can't, you know, and again, only knowing Egypt and arriving in Beirut, you're like, you feel like you're in Cancun, you know.
In La La Land. It's a La La Land, Beirut, like
in La La Land, exactly.
Yeah.
But I was taking, you know, videos for my parents. I was showing them like all the street parties, everything that was happening, and it was so inspiring, and it reminded me a lot of you know, 2003 Montreal, when everyone was just so excited for anything, and I really fell in love with it, you know, for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very special place, Beirut. Like, honestly, I mean, the unfortunate events of the past soon to be 12 months have led the country in a completely different path. But yeah, I agree. It's a very special, very special place. And now that, I mean, you've met many musicians from here. You've met musicians in Egypt. You've met musicians from all over the region. I want to ask you
Mm-hmm.
about what you think is the importance of the language they use when they perform. Because I'm sure you noticed there's a lot of artists in Lebanon who do sing in English and who do perform in English versus in Arabic.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to know what's your take on that. Is there a route, a successful route with language when it comes to performing?
I'm just going to say that whatever you choose to do with your music or your art in general, it's really, 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 really important that it's genuine. If it's not genuine, people are going to see through it. And it's happened a few times in my life that people I've known have said to me, I've done the most honest, just recorded the most honest work, the most honest album. I don't even care how it does. I am so happy with it. And once you're at that point of, I don't care how it is, I don't care how people are going to react, it's like all over the place. I can't even describe it, but I'm so happy with it. Whenever I've heard that from artists, these albums have ended up becoming huge. So I think that there's something very instinctual about how we listen to music, and when work isn't honest, we know. So the language, this and that, it's like, just make sure that you're doing something that is honest to you. And then I just want to say, because we have this reflection a lot over here, obviously in Quebec, being a very minority French population in North America, about language and singing in French and all of that. If you actually look at the worldwide YouTube charts, YouTube being the biggest streaming platform in the world for audio content and audio visual content. 10 years ago, the worldwide top 10 was in English. And if you look at the worldwide top 10 today, I haven't looked at it, but I guarantee you that there's 3 songs in Spanish, 3 songs in Hindi, one or 2 in English, and another one maybe in Russian. But we're seeing that it's interesting, because we thought that with like globalization that things were gonna start becoming standardized, but in fact we're seeing that people are more and more returning to their mother tongues when they're singing, and that is like perfectly striking in France, for instance, where again, 10 years ago, all the bands were singing in English. Now, if you look at the charts, if you're looking at YouTube, iTunes, whatever charts, everything is in French. There's not one song in English. So, don't, I just want to say about that, don't think that singing in Arabic will close doors for you. The Arabic market is 450 million people. It's a lot of people.
Yeah. I agree on the language thing. I always ask people's different opinions because I don't see them there being a rule of success. I'm just curious to know the different opinions. I mean, something like I don't know, Despacito a few years ago was the biggest hit in the world, and everyone was singing it all over the world, and nobody understood a word that what they were saying. So I totally agree. And speaking of things that change the world and that make an impact, with COVID and what's happened with COVID-19, where do you see the music industry going, like 1 year from now, or not even 1 year from now, 6 months from now? Where do you see what do you see a return of live concerts? Do you see more live streams? What's the thing? Where are we heading? Because nobody really knows. I mean, it's cool to see the predictions we make now, and 6 months passes like this. I mean, it's been 8 months that we've been doing the hula loop of lockdowns all over the world. So what do you think is going to happen next?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I hope is going to happen, and I'm always insanely, annoyingly optimistic. But I was at I watched a panel yesterday, and some people were echoing my deepest wishes. So I thought, yes, we're going in the right direction. But what I want to see now is borders falling. I want to see more international collaborations, and I want to see, artists and the teams around them taking advantage of the opportunity in a way that this weirdness has brought us. Because by not being so dependent on live in a funny way, it puts everyone on an even playing field. And then, again, not entirely, because some territories are receiving government support for, innovation and this and that. But, at the end of the day, like, community development has never been so important. And you can develop your communities absolutely anywhere. Like, nothing is stopping people anymore. Like, there are no rules right now. No rules.
Yeah. I say this all the time. There are no rules. I say it so much that, like, I want to put it in front of everyone's face. There are no rules for anything ever, forever. That's it.
Yeah,
Everything's been broken. Yeah. So I totally agree. I mean, there are no rules anymore. Have you seen any streaming, like, live stream shows that have stood out for you since the lockdowns have started everywhere?
Well, something that is happening over here is, and it's not so much of a show, but it's more of a party. It's called a Club Quarantine. It's based in Toronto, and it's sort of just this, like, online, like, dance party that really, like, just blew up. Within a few months, they had, like, Lady Gaga performed. They've had a lot of people. Wow. Like, if you go on the Instagram page, there's, like, Gwyneth Paltrow sending them a message and saying how wow. It was, like, a life-altering experience to attend one of their parties. But it's legitimately a lot of fun, and I think that a lot of the traction that they got was because it's an event that it happens on Zoom, but it's really just focused on the public. And they were able to create, like, when you attend, it's like, it's exciting, it's funny, it's a lot of different happy emotions, and it's really just a dance party on Zoom in the way that it's executed with the VJing and a lot of things. So I think that is something that artists are missing a lot. When everyone just, like, flocked to live stream, they tried to just, like, reproduce what they do on stage, in front of their phones and broadcast it on Instagram. But I'm going to say something maybe a bit harsh, but it's never been about, like, live music has never really been about the music. It's about the community experience.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, I recently actually gave a panel on this, and I read a quote from a journal called Frontiers of Sociology, and there was another study from Berkeley, and it talks about how singing together, for the human species, perhaps not only created society itself, but also the concept of the family. It's super powerful. Community experience is number one. When you're planning a live stream event, you have to think of how you're going to make people feel like they're in a community together, and that's not impossible, but it's just a question that we haven't quite reflected on yet. But I'm seeing more and more. I'm seeing thoughts slowly direct themselves towards that. So in a year, I just hope that, I hope that our industry changes, into something that's more sustainable for everyone, for the artists and their teams first, for all of the cultural workers. and that, you know, in the future we see a mix of like live but also virtual, and that we build an international community, that we maintain our connection with this international community, and that you know, culture is no longer just privileged consumption of like a certain part of the world.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I hope that's what's going to happen. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for this, and I hope that we'll catch each other in real life in Beirut or in Montreal soon. And I can't believe you've been here 3 times and I haven't seen you. This is my bad. I hold my hands up. This is terrible.
And so, it's particularly insane because you grew up with my boyfriend in Nigeria.
This is why it's so. It makes no sense, but yeah. So yeah, thank you, and hope to see you very soon.
Likewise.
Thanks.